Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I am making a video in English about a Kannada novel titled Badukalārada Balavantaru by Dr. M.P. Umadevi. Now I'll talk about why I am making this video in English a bit later, but first things first, what I hold in my hands today is a magnificent piece of literature. And the things I want to talk about are things that make me a bit sad. One of the first reasons that make me sad about this book is the fact that despite being a voracious reader, despite being surrounded by more voracious readers, some of whom are poets, writers, novelists, authors, journalists, theatre artists, and people who generally have immense love and respect for the written word, despite all this, none of us had ever heard of either Umadevi or this particular novel, Badukalārada Balavantaru. Now, not that we know a lot, not that I know a lot. In fact, my knowledge of Kannada literature is very little compared to some of my friends who are in this beautiful group called Padayatre, a Kannada poetry reading community that we have. Anyway, despite being very active in the Kannada literary events and being sort of in touch with many different groups that celebrate the Kannada consciousness, the fact that none of us had even heard of a glorious author such as M.P. Umadevi makes me pretty sad, and I feel a bit ashamed also. The second thing that makes me sad is the fact that because she is not so well known, to just get our hands on a copy of this book took several months since we got to know about it from our very dear friend Hema Nayak, to whom I want to give a shout out now. Hema is from Ankola, Hema Nayak. She is a published poet now, a brilliant one and a promising one for Kannada literature. Until she alerted us to this novel about a couple of months ago, like I said, none of us knew about it. But when we started looking to buy a copy, none of us were able to find it in any bookshops or any online stores, nowhere. And after several weeks of an intense search by at least 4 or 5 of my friends and myself, one of them, Vyasa, was able to find this copy in JSS College library in Mysuru. So this is the borrowed copy from JSS College from my beloved hometown Mysuru. I am pretty shocked actually that we do not even as much as mention Umadevi in any of the events, especially when we talk about literature that has come out in the late 70s, 1970s and early 1980s, which is when this book happened to Kannada literature. And we do not mention Umadevi when we talk about women in writing. We do not talk about her when we talk about feminism, and feminism especially in the Kannada context. I haven't even heard any women in the writing scene here talk about Umadevi. Where I'm coming from is not with a sense of entitlement, but only sadness, simply because this book is that glorious. The story is set in rural Karnataka, and a couple of things that my friend Hema mentioned about this book have stayed with me. One is, the kind of metaphors and the choice of phrases she uses in describing the life of these characters who live in poverty, some of them live in affluence, and there are all these dichotomies happening, and none of us, at least the ones who have read this book now, have come across the kind of metaphors that Umadevi has used. They're so fresh, so startlingly and sometimes shockingly fresh. Sometimes her choice of just 2 words for a metaphor is so inspiring. It's like we've never read anything like it before. And the way there is zero indulgence of the author herself in looking into poverty, right? Because sometimes the author might get carried away, and you see a lot of the author in the story than the characters themselves. A few authors tend to give in to that temptation. Perhaps that's the penance of writing, to not let that happen. and Umadevi so beautifully, wonderfully vanishes. She's absent in these pages when she's talking about these characters. It's almost as if she's gently coaxing you into going to the landscape it is set in, and you're sitting there and you're just watching all these characters live their daily life and go through their triumphs and tribulations and travesties and so on. So her insight into poverty and the kind of adversities that a lot of rural people face even today is so sincere, is so shockingly raw, almost naked in the way the details are laid out. No unnecessary embellishments is what I mean. When we talk about literature that has come out in those 2 decades, especially the 70s and 80s, we keep repeating the same names, some well-known names that are celebrated even today. So I think what we at Padayatre, our Kannada poetry reading community, are trying to do is find such hidden gems and talk about them more and more often, celebrate the authors more and more often. And the reason I'm making this video in English is because I want to reach out to more readers, not just Kannada readers, to draw their attention to a beautiful, beautiful attempt at storytelling, which, if I had to draw a parallel from the West, an equivalent would be, say, a John Steinbeck's The Grapes of Wrath. I kid you not, what The Grapes of Wrath did to American classicism is exactly what Badukalārada Balavantaru does to Kannada literature. And people who are ardent fans of Steinbeck and The Grapes of Wrath know what I'm talking about. So yeah, this is my very small, humble attempt to bring people's attention to a hidden gem in Kannada literature. And I so desperately, sincerely hope that one day soon it gets translated into English so that people across the world can read a wonderful story. I mean, any piece of literature that is glorious, that comes from any part of the world, is amazing, right? I mean, we read all these amazing European writers, South American writers, or Middle Eastern writers and South Asian writers who have written in languages sometimes we haven't even heard of, but they're available in English because there are some really wonderful translations. So I hope the same happens to Dr. MP Umadevi as well. She is a glorious writer. Apparently she has even written an epic, a Mahakavya as we call in Kannada, and I really hope to find a copy soon. Wish me luck. And also, if any of you watching this know anything at all about Dr. Umadevi, please reach out to me. Leave something at all in the comments below, because even when we did a search on the internet, Hema and I were able to find only one article about Umadevi in Prajavani, which also gave a very rough glimpse into the kind of person that she was. What you can gather from that one article is that she was somewhat of a recluse who liked to stay just quiet and kept to herself. So yeah, if you know anything at all about her or any of her works that you might have come across, please reach out to me, and I will make sure that I spread the word as much as I can. So that's about it for today. I will come back with another video very soon. Thank you very much.